and welcome to Powerful Stuff. Powerful. We are here in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Last week, I was joining you from Iguazu Falls, in between Brazil and Argentina. And I'm so excited for today's episode. So, especially going into the holidays, when we're around old friends, old family, we can feel kind of like trapped in old projections of what people thought we were. Maybe we've grown and changed a lot. I wanted to talk today about how to repel repel projections and remember who the fuck you are, and it's shown up for me in a few different ways this week, of course. But this is going to be a short and powerful episode, a little personal anecdote, some things that you can do, and then a little meditation, like a little bite-sized tapas, powerful stuff, if you will, for the holidays. We all got lots going on the holidays, so we're keeping it extra short, but extra powerful, always, sempre, as they say in Brazil. But yeah, so this is showing up for me in a few ways today. Maybe some of these will resonate with you. And then, everything is happening for us. So why, when we do feel this projection or we feel this disconnect between, who we are and who we know we could be, it's all happening for us to remember who we are. It's kind of like in The Lion King when Mufasa, I think it's Mufasa who tells Simba, like, remember who you are. That's what we're going to be doing today. So it's showing up for me in a few ways. I'll say the Rio one first, and then the one from last week. If you watched or listened to last week's expectation powerful stuff, and you were wondering, Meredith, what was that second topic that you kept alluding to, but then we didn't get to, and now I'm so curious. Have no fear, we're gonna talk about it today. So, in the Rio sense, remembering who we are. I was living in Rio in 2011 in between my sophomore and junior year of college, and I literally had the best time here. I was getting over heartbreak, college heartbreak as one does, from my time at Harvard. I was kind of seeing this guy, and then we ended it right before I left for Rio. And I feel like Brazil was like my Bali, of eat, pray, love, like remembering who I am, like coming back to that free-spirited Meredith. I was taking music lessons at the Conservatory of Rio. I wrote a bossa nova song called Coisas Inesperadas there, with Vladimir Oliveira, my guitar teacher. Shout out Vladimir Oliveira if you're listening to this podcast right now. And and it's a song that I play to this day. And one of my lines from the song is, I came with someone and now it's just me. The most unexpected can have the most beauty, right? When we're just in that flow of life, allowing for the spontaneity, allowing ourselves to be surprised and delighted by things. And I was also working with this movement, Rio On Watch, which does community grassroots reporting in the favelas. So they were, working with and teaching people in the favelas how to be grassroots journalists, both in print and in photo, ahead of the World Cup and ahead of the Olympics, to document what was happening between the people in the favelas and the government as they were kind of clearing out some of the favelas in preparation for being on the world stage. And so I would go into these favelas. I'd, taken Portuguese at Harvard for 2 years, but it hadn't really clicked. And then I was forced all of a sudden thrown into the deep end of like speaking to these people in communities in Portuguese. And I found so much inner strength in myself in that trip in Brazil, like learning bossa nova chords, really learning Portuguese, like on the ground. And also like being invited by the people in the different favelas like Pavãozinho and Vidigal and Rocinha, if you're familiar in Rio, to baile funkies, which are like street parties. So I would like take a motorcycle taxi up to the top of this favela at like 1 a.m. and like dance with people. And I'd be, talking to men who were like running, the favelas. Sometimes like some of the gangs run the favelas if it's not pacified yet. And they would be like, oh, your Portuguese is so good. How long will you be in Brazil? I was just kind of like fearless and like throwing myself into all different corners of Rio. I also did the Rio Marathon while I was here. And it's like all along the beach from, I think it's like Baja to Pau de Açúcar, all on the beach. And like my whole Portuguese Harvard, summer in Brazil classmates like came out and cheered me on. and I was doing all these hikes and making all these new friends and like getting an internship with like a TV station here. I just felt like I was like living my best life and that I was like in the pulse, in the flow of Rio. And yeah, and it's so funny because even though I was, kind of in college during that time of like, who am I? What's going to happen next? And even though I was getting over this guy where I kind of felt like I was coping with, rejection and finding my own inner strength, I really do feel like I was traveling at the way that I love the most, which is like traveling with purpose, like really getting to know locals, getting to know their stories, really staying in one place long enough to have a routine, to like make friends with like your local baristas. I got a 1 month gym membership at Body Tech, or as they said it in Rio, Body Techie, and had my own like trainer, and he'd be like, I've been noticing improvements. And yeah, I just felt like I was part of the community here, and I really love that. And anyway, so I'm here 13 years later, which is fucking crazy. 13 years. It's like basically a kid in middle school. What? And it was so nostalgic coming back. And I brought my guitar and I just played Coisas Inesperadas this morning on Copacabana Beach on the guitar. And it's so funny because, I'm thinking about that Meredith who I was then. And of course, with my self-development work, a lot of what I've talked about on Powerful Stuff and like learning to love myself and breaking negative patterns when it comes to love and dating and all the lives I've lived in between as a beverage founder, as a journalist, and now as a coach. I was thinking about that 20-year-old Meredith, and I was like, it was like twofold. Sometimes we look back at our past self and we can like cringe or be like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. Or we can look back with compassion, right? Of like, she was doing the best she could with what she had and whatnot. But I realized this time that I actually admired, or I really not just realized it, but like I really came to deeply appreciate that I really fucking admire that 20-year-old Meredith, right? Of course, there's things that I'm wiser in right now, like around my worth and mindfulness tools and like regulating my stress and showing up better in my romantic relationship. But there's stuff that I'm like, that Meredith could fucking teach me a few things, like that we kind of forget sometimes. We feel like it was part of us or always part of us, but then we don't maintain it and it kind of atrophies or calcifies. And I feel like it's such a valuable and important practice, especially around the holidays when we're back with family or the New Year as we're thinking about the new year, kind of like I've talked about in past episodes of gratitude to manifest, of like having reverence for all the women that we were before. In fact, there's this like song, I've Been 1,000 Different Women by Trevor Hall's wife. I forget her name, but it's really, really beautiful. And it's kind of like lay flowers at their feet. They all brought you to who you are today. And I was just thinking about that Meredith from Rio. And I was like, wow, like I deeply admire her spontaneity, right? Her fearlessness of like throwing herself into these new situations and just being so excited to experience every corner of Rio and every corner of life. And her ability to just like get out of her comfort zone and like meet new friends and talk to new people. And of course, part of that still exists in me now, but did I see myself necessarily this time around going to a favela for a baile funky at 1 a.m.? No, unless I was like, had a reason to be there and was invited by somebody and knew somebody there, right? So it's just like, I really admire that fearlessness of that Meredith and like that desire to be in one place and really squeeze all the life out of it and like, um, you know, learn so much from it. And I just really, during that month in Rio, admired my own commitment to that as I look back, and also like how much I like learned from all of my Brazilian friends of going with the flow, of relaxing, of not needing to over plan. Whereas this time around in Brazil, I found myself, as I talked about last week with expectation, wanting to over plan a little bit because, again, it's like that inner Meredith who wants to plan everything to make everything perfect because they're trying to do a good thing for us because they want to impress us and they want us to be happy. And we don't necessarily need that. And sometimes it can have the adverse effect, right? So I guess my lesson with this Rio projection thing is when we look back at our past versions of ourselves, to not just look back at how much you've grown from then and all the wisdom you've accrued from them, which is of course super valuable. I feel like we are very well aware to do that in the self-development world, and that's super valuable, and we still will have a journaling question around it. And also, what could I learn from that past version of me? What do I need to relearn? What do I need to remember, right? Like this 33-year-old version of me looks back at that 20-year-old version of Meredith and is like, I could relearn. She's reminding me of who I am, of that spontaneous, free-spirited, like more chill, like the most unexpected can have the most beauty, right? There's glimpses of that in me, but I have noticed myself become a little bit like more I don't even want to say uptight, because I don't think I'm uptight. I do think I'm like relatively chill, but like a little bit more calculated maybe of how I spend my time. And not that that's like a bad thing, but again, remembering, like allowing a little bit of space for magic, allowing a little bit more flexibility, allowing a little bit more, okay, I'm going to go off the beaten trail. And so that's the first step that I want to give you guys, of like thinking back to a time in your life that felt really pivotal or foundational, or maybe it just felt like you were your best self in that chapter of your life. And to start by saying, not only, what wisdom have I learned since then, or what has that period taught me, or what have I learned, beyond that period, and how have I integrated it into my current life, right? That's a great step one of what wisdom have I learned since. But then step two is the remembering. How do I really admire that version of myself? How is that version of myself so powerful and so unique? What do I need to remember about who I am by looking at that past version of me? What is she teaching me, or what is he teaching me now? you know and bringing that forth, calling that back, because life is about remembering, and it's about remembering our most expressed quality. So how was I fully expressed back then? In what ways am I still doing that, and in what ways am I not doing that? How could I do that more? What is the message for me from that past version of myself about what I can remember about who I am? Remember, Simba, remember. So that's first step, guys. That's my little anecdote, if you will, for the first part of it. And then the second part, to go into this theme of remembering who you are, is so we've kind of built the foundation for that, right? And you can do this with different parts of your life. Like I could do that I just talked to you guys about that for Rio. I could totally talk about that for my other times, like traveling and living in Africa, or when I was in London doing my master's degree, or when I was getting my yoga teacher training, or when I was in high school as a teen reporter. Like I could go through these different phases, and it's a great exercise to do for all these different phases, like almost like you're, kind of sometimes how we write letters from our future self to our present self, like writing a letter from your past self to your present self. What does she want you to remember? Wow, that's powerful. I just thought of that on the spot. I'm like, I need to do that as soon as I get off this call with you guys, get off this podcast with you guys. So that's a huge thing. And then once we have that foundation, and again, you can do that with different parts of your life, then I would say, the second thing that happened, I'm not going to lie to you guys, because I never do, and I'm not going to start today. Okay. So just know that. But I felt like with my husband, we had a little, as I talked about with our expectation week, within that, there was a little bit of projection, dare I say, and I've projected on him too, but I'll talk about this with what he's done with me, and we've both talked about it since. And he has by the way, before you guys get worried, he has given me his permission for me to talk about it on the podcast, because we're very transparent about what we're working through. And obviously we wake up every day and still continue to choose each other. And I'll take radical ownership in my part as I explain this. But yeah, he gave me permission to tell this story. So here I go. So within that expectation thing, of I kind of wanted him to hang out with me more. He was working really hard, which I'm super proud of him for. And then I was kind of like bummed, and probably like my little kinky shadow side of victim energy was like, oh, why is this happening? And kind of like my ownership of it, it was that I was, depending on, like, not depending on Spencer, but being like, oh, he like if he can't hang out with me, like it's annoying because it impacts my travel time here. Even though I would totally go off and do things on my own, I think in the moment when I was having those conversations with him, I would place that on him, right? So then he was feeling that expectation or projection from me. And then he was projecting onto me like, oh, like I want a wife who isn't like this dependent, who's more self-reliant, who's like conscientious, who's ambitious. And he told me that. And you guys, like my I popped my lid or whatever the expression is. Like I was so pissed when he said that. And then I went into defending mode, like because he's like, I want a wife who's conscientious, who's ambitious, who's a self-starter. And obviously I had projected onto him, but then he was saying these things to me and I knew they were a projection, right? I knew that deep down he knows that I am ambitious, that I am conscientious, but that he was feeling frustrated at me for probably projecting onto him, and then he was projecting onto me and not doing it in a very eloquent way. And then I went into defense mode, right? I started listing off all the ways that I am ambitious and that I am conscientious. And then I like re-Googled the definition of conscientious and then got even more mad that he would like say that about me. And then I felt like I needed to defend, and I was going into like mama bear mode of like defending Meredith and defending who Meredith is. And obviously when you go into defense mode, it's one of my friends, Kieran, on our past podcast has said like, you know, if you like your partner matches the energy you show up with, right? So if you're in defense mode, guess what? They're going to be in defense mode. They're going to be defending their position. They're not going to be like, oh no, you're right. Like you have done all these things. Because when he said that, I went into like, here's all the reasons Meredith is conscientious and ambitious. I'm like, I've run marathons. I've been doing coaching while I'm here. I've been planning all these things for my friends. I've been da 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 da. And it was like for me to like defend and prove myself. But it's kind of like that expression of like, show don't tell, you know? And it's like Spencer knows all these things, so like who am I trying to prove this to? And is that the energy that I want to be showing up with, or would like the energy of an ambitious and conscientious Meredith, which I know I am, be just fucking going out and doing those things, you know? And so the first time around when I was getting defensive or trying to prove, he would just like kind of shut down or also be defensive, and our tones weren't the best with each other. And I get more frustrated because I feel like he still wasn't seeing it my way. Right. We kind of had an impasse or a gridlock, if you will, as our couples coach likes to call it. And so what I realized in kind of taking time away by myself, it then kind of made me go into like, well, I'm going to show you energy. And I went off and did all these things by myself. I like did the hike. I like booked the Reiki session. I like met the other people. I did like some of my business stuff that I had been kind of dragging my feet on. And I started showing up as that ambitious and conscientious person that I know I am. And then it was like my internal voice being like, see, I told you so. I know this, you know, this is me. This is who I am. And I was like, then also playing guitar. It's like I was like nursing myself back to who I am, you know. I was like playing guitar, doing the things that make me feel the most me. I was calling the friends that make me super happy, and like just talking to them or catching up with them, even if it's not specifically about that, like reminded me who I was. I was like creating or putting out fun things on Instagram, like I like to do, and recording this podcast. And so when he was seeing me do all of that stuff, of course, lo and behold, when I wasn't trying to prove to him that I was those things, he was like, wow, like, I'm sorry, you know, realizing that it was a little bit of a projection, and um, being like, of course you are those things, and I'm sorry. But by that time, I didn't need him to tell me, right? Because I was doing it. I was feeling so in my power and energized by it that I wasn't worried about proving it to him, because I was like making shit happen. I was starting to feel good in my energy. And it was like this positive feedback loop of like, okay, what more do I want to create? Not to prove to Spencer, but because this is like enjoyable, because I'm loving doing this. And so that's kind of like the second lesson after the, you know, remembering who we are from these past parts of our life and how can we call that forth into the present. If someone's projecting onto us, it doesn't help to try to prove to them and list off all the reasons why that's like not true, right? it's like the boomerang effect. As I'm doing so many callbacks to my past powerful stuff episodes, you guys will just have to go back and listen. But it's like the boomerang effect that Shola Richards in Civil Unity talks about when we're trying to change someone's mind. The more we try to change it verbally, and be like, this is why this is right and this is wrong, the more it actually like boomerangs it, and it has the opposite effect. What? It has the opposite effect. So that's why it's so important to actually just go off, take some time to yourself. There's nothing wrong with taking time to yourself, and do the things that help you reconnect to that essence of you. For me, it was like playing guitar, talking to my friends, going for a long run, going to a hot yoga, getting some stuff done so I feel really empowered with my work stuff. But for you, it might be like painting. It might be like going for a hike without your phone. It might be, I definitely highly recommend like calling other friends who like see you in your power. And it's okay like to feel hurt by that person's projection. So definitely take time to like acknowledge that, right? I had like the angry journal, I had the car scream, I had the like fuck you letter. And then once you've kind of given yourself that space and time to like grieve it, then go do the thing that's going to make you feel in your power. And if you're like with family over the holidays, um, you know, it's also okay to set a loving boundary. You don't have to prove, but you can say like, I understand where that's coming from. That's no longer me. So I appreciate, not making any calls about my character, and then change the subject. Like, don't get defensive. Just be like, I would appreciate you not making any, judgments about my character. Anyways, like, how is this? Right? It's like very even keeled, because what that person might be trying to do is get a reaction from you. And it's not necessarily a great thing, but they might be trying to do it maybe because they want to see you still care about them, or they want to feel important. It's coming out in a perverse way. Doesn't matter. It's their stuff. It's their patterns. They need to go through their journey. But by not reacting to it or getting defensive, it actually kills the pattern, because it's not giving them the energy, the feed, like, feeding it with sugar or whatever that they're looking for. So setting a loving boundary, remaining kind of emotionless in how you say it, going off, processing if you need to, letting your emotions come out privately. And then acting as if, like, doing the things that are going to make you feel in your power instead of defending yourself, which like drains you of your power. So those are the key things, guys. The first part, as I mentioned with the Rio, is like remembering who you are, remembering a time in your life where you did feel super in your power, where it did bring out a different side of you. That part of you is still there. It's just dormant. It's inactive. It needs to be awakened. And write a letter to yourself from that part of you of what do they want you to remember? What do they want you to remember about who the fuck you are? And then the second part is when you do experience a projection from someone, now that you're feeling rooted and solid in your power and these different parts of you are being expressed, don't react to it. Don't react to it. You can set a boundary, go process it privately, let your emotions out privately, which is totally fine and completely encouraged. And then do the things that are going to make you feel in your power. Do the things that, like, your past self that you wrote the letter from would feel nourished and lit up by. Because then, and do something new, do something spontaneous, do something out of your comfort zone. Because then it's also saying, like, I'm surprising myself. I'm learning new things about myself. Gosh, I forgot how like strong and courageous and spontaneous and fun I am. And that energy is going to be the magnetic energy, right? It's going to be the energy that not just protects you through like whatever projection, but elevates you from it, catapults you from it, uses the projection as the catalyst and catapult for it. Okay, guys. With that being said, let's just drop in. Let's just drop into a little medi from that. That was a short and powerful episode, but very raw and vulnerable. Thanks for holding space. I'm excited to hear what yours is that you're working through. So we'll just close our eyes. We'll take a deep breath in. Hold at the top, like you're calling forth a past version of you, and exhale it out, starting to see them crystallize in your mind's eye. Another breath in to really transport you back to that time from that past version of you who is feeling fully expressed and in their power. And exhale, let it go. And then third and deepest breath in, holding at the top. And as you exhale, fully just let yourself surrender to this past scene with your past self. And as you see this past self, noticing how old you are, noticing where you are in the world, and just watching the scene play out in your mind's eye of you feeling super expressed in all sides of you in these different ways, how you are pulsing with life, how you carried yourself back then, and just looking at yourself with so much awe and compassion. Maybe you can do that initial noticing of the wisdom that you've learned since, just acknowledging it and feeling proud about how you've grown since, and maybe your mindset or an insight. But as you acknowledge that, also kind of hold reverence for that past version of you you're seeing unfold in your mind's eye. Noticing their freedom, their energy, and then asking them, what do they want you to remember right now? Why are they showing up? Why this particular scene or this particular point in life? Why are they showing up right now to remind you of what you need to remember? What quality, what message do they have for you? Just being silent, letting them speak. And as you receive their wisdom, feeling that quality or those qualities start to breathe from them into you, into your heart space now, almost like it's awakening that part of you, feeling wherever it's starting to awaken in your body. And imagine, like, as you breathe into it, kind of dust falling off and out of you, awakening this beautiful golden light that's always been there, that this past version of you came to remind you of who you are. And as you breathe into this golden light, feeling all the dust around it fall away, feeling yourself even more energized and even more awake to this. And then asking that past version of you, how can you step into this right now with whatever projection you're shaking off or escaping, whether from someone else or yourself? What's something that you could do this week to really start to embody this energy again? Trusting whatever they say. Letting them know you can do that. Thanking them for this wisdom and how proud you are of them. How grateful you are for them to come back and remind you. And as you thank them, really feeling that golden light come all the way up and out the crown of your head, like you're totally radiating this, and any projection that you've been feeling in the present moment totally falls away from this golden light projecting outward, too strong to let any projection come in. And as you feel radiant and reminding yourself who you are, maybe saying silently to yourself a declaration. I know who I am. I am the most powerful, most expressed version of me. And I commit to blank. What are you committing to? And then you might even say, the more I do this, the more I step into my power. Or the more I allow myself to surrender, to express whatever it might be, the more I step into my power. So just taking a moment to share this declaration with yourself internally. And as you breathe it in deeply, getting a vision of you fully expressed in this power, bridging that past version of you with the present version of you. Feeling even more present and empowered then to create whatever you create next for the future version of you. thanking your past self, thanking those involved, maybe even thanking internally those who were projecting onto you for waking you up to this, for being the catalyst for this remembering. And with so much gratitude and so much connection from past and present, taking a deep breath in, exhale it out, let it go. And then another deep and slow breath in. And exhale, opening your eyes, coming back into this space. Wow. I hope that was as powerful for you guys as it was for me, as always. And yeah, just a reminder to sum up, starting with looking at a past version of you, starting with the wisdoms, like what have you learned since then? What are the insights that you're taking with you now? And then going into gratitude. Why are they showing up now? Why is that vision showing up? What are they here to teach you or remind you about from that past version of you that you love? What qualities of that past version of you do you love and are you so deeply grateful for? And then writing that letter to yourself from that past version of you of what they want you to remember now, how it helps add to your power to remember who you are. And then that third step, if you're experiencing projection, right, is to internally and potentially even externally set a boundary with said person who is projecting onto you, and then ask yourself, what can I do to step into my power, right? So instead of proving, what are things that I can do and that I commit to doing to step into my power? And it's okay if you also want to add to that like a journaling exercise of like reminding yourself who you are or making these declarations, reminding yourself of all the times you've actually done X and Y and Z. And there you have it, guys. I hope this serves you going into your holidays with people, and I hope it serves you going into the new year, remembering who the fuck you are, because you're fucking powerful. I see it, I feel it, and I'm excited for the rest of the world to see it and feel it too. I'm excited to hear about your past versions of your past selves. And I can't wait to do our roundup of the 2024 musings next week with you. Send this episode to someone if they need to remember who they are. And I will see you next week for more powerful stuff. Hey, you. Thank you for coming on this powerful journey with me. I hope it was as powerful for you as it was for me. And if it was, it would mean the world to me if you rate, review, and subscribe to Powerful Stuff so I can keep bringing you the goods. We can keep going on this transformative journey together. And if there's powerful stuff that you want to share with me, with the Powerful Stuff community, tag us on Instagram @that'spowerful